Some people pick the wrong battles, and this HOA just picked one with 12 tons of diesel-powered stubbornness. They said my crops were unsightly, my tractor was an eyesore, and that I had 72 hours to dismantle the very land my grandfather built with his bare hands. I warned them, this ain't some cookie-cutter cul-de-sac with flower beds and matching mailboxes. This is a working farm. But they didn't listen. So when their clipboard crusader showed up with a smile and a citation, I fired up my old John Deere and gave them a lesson in property lines, steel, and silence. Comment below, have you ever seen someone fight back without saying a word? I'd just finished planting the last row of sweet corn when I saw the SUV roll up the gravel driveway. A spotless black crossover with chrome accents, way too clean to have ever touched real dirt. The logo on the door read, Clearbrook Lakes HOA, Enforcement Division. I didn't even know HOAs had enforcers, but here they were. The door opened, and out stepped a woman in heels, on a farm. She looked like she'd stepped out of a real estate catalog. Tight bun, beige blazer, designer sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly water bill. And in her hand, a clipboard, the deadliest weapon in suburban warfare. "Excuse me," she called out, already annoyed that I hadn't come running. "Are you Mr. Dalton?" I nodded, wiping my hands on my jeans. "That's me." She clicked her pen like a loaded gun. "I'm here on behalf of the Clearbrook Lakes Homeowners Association. We've received multiple complaints about your property. It appears to be in violation of several community codes." I looked around at my farm. 4 acres of honest land, the same soil my granddad plowed, same barn he built with a hammer and grit. "Complaints from who?" "I'm not at liberty to disclose that," she snapped. "But your tractor, it's visible from the road. That violates Ordinance 4C, Section 12. No commercial equipment may be stored in public view. Also, your fence isn't the required white vinyl. Your crops encroach the 10-foot easement. And," she flipped another page, "you've got a rooster. Roosters are classified as nuisance animals under our bylaws." I stared at her for a long moment. "Ma'am, this isn't a landscaping project. It's a farm. It's been a farm for 70 years. She gave a tight smile, the kind people wear when they're used to getting their way. "Well, Mr. Dalton, it might have been once, but Clearbrook Lakes is a planned lifestyle community now, and your farm aesthetic doesn't align with our brand." Her exact words, "our brand." The next morning, I found a yellow notice stapled to my fence post. "You have 72 hours to remove all non-compliant structures and vehicles or face legal action and daily fines of $500. No court hearing, no conversation, just a threat. I could have called a lawyer. I could have sent a letter. But see, farmers don't do passive-aggressive. We do direct action. And so, I walked out to the barn, grabbed my keys, and climbed up into my grandfather's old John Deere 7810. Faded green paint, cracked leather seat, V8 diesel that rumbled like thunder. It had hauled hay, plowed snow, pulled tree stumps, and survived 2 tornadoes. But today, it was about to face a new enemy. Bureaucracy. And just like that, the war began. Comment below. What do you think I did with that tractor first? Because it wasn't what they expected. Not even close. You ever hear a diesel engine scream awake at dawn? That morning, it wasn't just noise. It was a battle cry. The kind that echoed across all 4 acres, shaking the dew off every cornstalk and sending birds flying from the trees. My John Deere roared to life like a green beast crawling out of hibernation, and I didn't wait. Long before rolling it straight down the gravel path toward the HOA's newest pet project, their freshly installed community welcome pavilion, it was a useless little thing, gazebo style, No real purpose except to look pretty for the brochures. Took up half the communal green space. HOA paid $38,000 for it last quarter, if the leaked financials I'd seen were right. And it just happened to sit 10 feet into my property line. Oh, they didn't expect me to know that. But my family's old survey markers were still buried out back. Rusted, yes, but solid. Just like the law. I positioned the tractor at the edge of my field, threw it into low gear, and began dragging a disc harrow across the tall HOA-approved Kentucky bluegrass. Dirt flew, sod tore. The fake beauty they worshipped was no match for steel. Within minutes, I heard the panic. Cell phones ringing, voices shouting, doors opening all down the road. Mrs. Clipboard, her real name was Cheryl, I'd found out, came sprinting across the field in flats, still trying to look official with her papers flapping like surrender flags. "Mr. Dalton, stop that immediately! You're destroying HOA property!" I pulled the throttle back just enough to talk. "You mean the gazebo that's 10 feet into my easement?" I pointed to the rusted marker I'd dug up. "You're trespassing. You'll be fined for this. You can't just—" I cut her off with a horn blast so loud it made her jump. Then I kept plowing. By now, the neighbors were lining up along the sidewalks, some with crossed arms, some filming, and a few, just a few, were smiling. See, Cheryl thought she had the town in her back pocket, but she never asked what the older residents thought. Folks who remembered when Clearbrook Lakes was just Clearbrook Farm, and HOA meant help out always, not harass our agriculture. That afternoon, I parked the tractor dead center on the community green and left it there like a statue. A symbol. A big, muddy middle finger made of Detroit steel and family legacy. Then I stapled my own letter on the community board right next to the HOA's fine notice. It was short. Just said, "This land has fed families for 3 generations. I don't answer to people who decorate their mailboxes. Dalton." By sunset, that tractor had more selfies with it than the HOA gazebo ever did. But that night, that's when things really changed. Because someone, and I'm guessing it wasn't Cheryl, decided to send a stronger message. And when I woke up at 3 a.m. to the smell of smoke, I realized this wasn't about rules anymore. It had just turned personal. The flames were small, but they were intentional, no doubt. They'd soaked the barn's side wall in accelerant and tossed in a smoldering rag through the slats, hoping it would spread before I noticed. Lucky for me, I'm a light sleeper and an even lighter drinker. I caught the smoke before it got past the feed room, grabbed the fire extinguisher, kicked open the side door, and knocked the flames down before they reached the rafters. The damage? Minimal. The message? Loud. They weren't just fining me now. They were trying to scare me off my land. But there's one thing these HOA paper pushers forgot. Farmers don't fold. We dig in. That morning I didn't go to the sheriff's office. I went to the county assessor, pulled every plat map, zoning record, and survey document on Clearbrook Lakes going back 50 years. And what I found? Half the HOA's precious green space sits on land that was never legally transferred. Technically, it still belongs to the original Clearbrook Farm Trust. My family. They'd been building on borrowed land, issuing citations on property that was never theirs. And the kicker? Every HOA decision for the last 10 years was signed by a president using an expired license. It was fraud stacked on fraud. But that wasn't even the real bombshell. The real one was tucked in a quiet file stamp, head with a faded seal. Environmental restrictions, agricultural overlay, 1984. Turns out a large portion of my land and the community commons sits on protected farmland. No permanent structures, no chemical fertilizers, no artificial turf. Violating those codes isn't just a civil issue. It's a state-level environmental crime. They weren't just picking a fight with a farmer, they were dancing on a legal landmine. So I made some calls, not to lawyers, to journalists, and to Old Man Carter, the last of the original farmers who'd been pushed out 5 years ago by HOA expansion. The next weekend, we held a little community harvest festival. Unofficial, of course, but we had tractors lined up at the neighborhood entrance, kids picking pumpkins, and signs that read, "Welcome to Clearbrook Farm, not just a pretty fence." Hundreds showed up, even folks from other counties. Local news vans parked across the road. And as the cameras rolled, I stood on the very gazebo they'd built and held up the original deed showing the land was still mine. I showed photos of the burned barn wall. I read the environmental code violations, and then I told the world, calmly, I'm not moving. They are. By Monday morning, 3 HOA board members resigned. Cheryl didn't. She doubled down, sent me a cease and desist claiming I was slandering the HOA. But her real move came later that night. My daughter, Sarah, 17 years old, strong-willed and sharp as a tack, found a letter slipped under our front door. Typed, no name, no return address, just one line. Back off, or next time, it won't be just your barn. That's when it stopped being about land, or tractors, or bylaws. They'd crossed a line, and I was done playing defense. Comment below, what would you do if someone threatened your kid? Because next time they came after me, I'd be the one writing the rules. The letter was a mistake. Not just legally, personally. You can find me, smear my name, even light a match under my barn. But the second you threaten my daughter, you've just fertilized the wrong field. By sunrise, I was already downtown, not to beg, but to build ammo. I walked into the county assessor's office with boots still muddy from the fire scene, and by noon I walked out with a folder full of buried truth. My family's original deed, untouched, never fully transferred. The HOA's illegal use of land that technically never left our name. And the killer, protected farmland overlay that made their playground and fake pond a state-level environmental violation. But here's what I didn't expect. As I spread that paperwork across the hood of my truck in front of the courthouse, a local journalist snapped a photo. 2 hours later, it was trending under Farm vs. A. That post? 1,000 shares in 1 hour. National attention by sunset. Now Cheryl had a different kind of problem. Sunlight. She tried to counter, sent me a cease and desist through her lawyer, showed up to a town hall with a new blazer, fake tears, and a carefully rehearsed speech about rural redevelopment. I didn't speak. Not that night. I didn't have to. The crowd did it for me. Mothers, veterans, grandparents who remembered the original farm, even kids who learned to ride their bikes on the dirt paths before they were paved over. But just when it looked like the tide was turning, a black SUV rolled into the meeting parking lot. No logos. Out-of-state plates. 2 men in suits stepped out, whispered something to Cheryl, then disappeared without a word. She left 10 minutes later, face pale, speech forgotten. And suddenly, things went quiet. Too quiet. That's when I realized Cheryl wasn't the boss anymore. She was just the front. And whoever was behind her. They weren't done with me yet. What do you think those black sedan men told her? A week passed. Not a fine. Not a visit. Not a word. No Cheryl. No new citations. No drone flyovers. It was like the HOA vanished overnight. On the surface, it looked like victory. But something about it felt off. Too clean. Then on Thursday, I got a visit. Not from a neighbor or a county official, but from an old friend I hadn't seen in years. Tom Willis, state-level auditor. We served in the Guard together. He didn't call. He just showed up in his government-issued sedan, pulled off his sunglasses, and said, "Dalton, whatever you've kicked over here, it's bigger than Clearbrook, a lot bigger." He opened his trunk and pulled out a manila folder. Inside, financial records from 12 HOAs across the state, all with the same signatures. Shell companies. Community improvement fees funneled into private accounts. The same law firm representing every HOA, including Cheryl's, and a quiet LLC based out of a downtown office, owned by a name I hadn't heard in years. Richard Langford, real estate developer, political donor, former head of the State Council on Planned Neighborhoods. He wasn't just behind Cheryl. He was behind the rules themselves. "This isn't just HOA abuse," Tom said. "It's racketeering." Suddenly it made sense. The silence, the threats, the black sedans. Clearbrook was just one test market. They pushed farmers off land, turned neighborhoods into lifestyle communities, and made millions off arbitrary fines, development deals, and ghost companies that billed residents for fake upgrades. "Dalton, I need you to go public," Tom said. "They won't come after me, but if you speak, people will listen." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about saving my farm. It was about saving every place like it. So I called Sarah into the barn. We sat down by the old hay bales and talked for hours. I told her about the history, the documents. I didn't call the police, not because I didn't trust them, but because I knew who they answered to. Langford's reach went far. Badges, banks, courts, he owned pieces of all of them. So I didn't report the threat. I broadcast it. I scanned the photo, posted it to every platform with one caption. "They just threatened my daughter. This is what HOA corruption looks like when it's done hiding." It blew up in less than an hour. National news picked it up. Veteran groups, farming unions, watchdog orgs, even celebs were retweeting it. By nightfall, Sarah and I were under federal protection. And Langford? He made a mistake. He filed a defamation suit. That meant depositions, which meant discovery, which meant we got to open the books. And oh boy, the books were bleeding. Within weeks, $4.8 million in unexplained improvement fees traced to 17 HOAs. Over 40 residents statewide had been forced out of their homes illegally. Multiple law enforcement officials had signed off on falsified code enforcement citations. Langford's empire wasn't just corrupt, it was organized crime in a cardigan. And Cheryl? She flipped faster than a pancake on a Sunday griddle, testified against Langford in exchange for reduced sentencing. Said the plan was always the same. Push out the locals, raise HOA dues, bring in desirable buyers, and if anyone resists, fine them, shame them, or crush them. But not this time. This time they picked a man with a tractor, a daughter, and roots too deep to dig out. The final court hearing was televised. I showed up in the same boots I wore the day Cheryl stapled her first notice to my fence. Sarah sat next to me, calm and strong. We said nothing while Langford tried to spin his way out. But when the judge read the verdict, 22 counts of racketeering, 15 years federal time, he looked at me. "Mr. Dalton," he said, "do you have anything you'd like to say to the court?" I stood, cleared my throat, and said, "Yeah, I've only ever known two codes, one from a book, the other from the land. Turns out they both bury liars the same way. Today, Clearbrook Farms is a real place again. No HOA, no fines, no fake ponds, just fields, neighbors, and freedom. That old John Deere? We restored it, painted it fresh, bolted a plaque to the side that says, 'This machine fought corruption.' Sarah? She just got accepted to agricultural law school, says she's going to help families like ours fight back across the country. Langford? Still in prison. Rumor is, his cellmate used to own a farm until HOA fees broke him. Life's funny like that. And me? I still get up before the sun. Still plant rows that my grandfather once walked. But now I do it knowing we buried more than just roots here. We buried every last lie they thought we'd swallow. Have you ever been told to know your place? Because sometimes, though, that place is exactly where the fight begins.